Could we all stand for our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments. Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please complete one of the speaker cards in advance of the meeting. Hand it to a member of staff. Do we have anyone from the public wishing to speak? Seeing no one, I will now move for approval of minutes.
Move approval. Second.
First, second, and a third. We will now call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Consent calendar.
Move approval.
Second.
First, second. Any discussion?
Just one question. I'm new here.
Is it on? Oh, it is on. Great. Under item 2.1, where they increased the attorney's figures from $10,000 to $60,000, I didn't get to that item. I was able to read it, but am I understanding that that's for the entire year? Is that correct? Is that a month?
Yeah, so it's designed to cover an appeal if an appeal occurs. So it was increased from 10 to another number, but the issue was appealed, and then we don't know if it's going to be appealed again. So we have to do more than we thought we'd have to do.
So this is just one issue?
A brief. Yes, it's
okay,
one
that's
issue.
Not their annual.
Specialized issue.
Yeah, that's probably in the explanation somewhere, but I didn't get to it. So thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's all right. Any more discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Moving. That took care of it. We will now move into regular agenda items. 4A1, new item, Interstate 680. Tim.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Tim Hale, Deputy Executive Director for Projects, and I'm just going to really provide a brief introduction on this item. Barbara Lawrenson's here from MTC to really do this presentation for you. But MTC has went to SWAT and Transpac to discuss some proposed revisions in terms of policies, upcoming policies to the express lanes on I-680. And so based on that, we wanted to bring that to the authority board, make sure everyone's informed. MTC Commission is going to be voting on that next month. And so we want to make sure you listen to it, hear about it. And so with that, I'll invite Barbara up to the podium and for the presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening, board members. One correction, actually MTC's board, BAFA, that's the committee at MTC that oversees our express lane policies. It stands for the Bay Area Infrastructure Financing Authority. They'll be meeting next week to do the final vote on this. What we're doing is the express lane on 680 opened in October of 2017. And we are amending our toll policy ordinance at this point for the introduction of the 880 lane. And so because of that, that's driving the timing of this amendment to our ordinance. And we're changing we're suggesting to change two policies for 680. The first is that the minimum toll will rise to 50 cents. And the second is that clean air vehicles will be charged a half-price toll. That's good. So what we've been doing for the past couple of months is talking to the public about these changes. And because there's a lot of changes on 880 and then these two on 680, we've mostly been doing the outreach in 880. In the 880 corridor, but there has been overlap in the strategies. So in October, we went to BAFA with an information item about these changes. Then in November, we put the official notice in the newspapers about the change of the ordinance. And in December, we had some open houses in the 880 corridor. But also in that time frame between November 18th and December 18th, we had an online open house, and we let people know about the online open house through social media. And we ended up getting over 600 comments about the express lanes, and they're from all they're from, and the social media outreach was through Nextdoor and through Facebook, and it was also targeted in Contra Costa in the 680 corridor. So we did get comments from the jurisdiction here. We also had a public meeting at MTC on December 18th. And then and we got one comment at that public meeting from a Contra Costa resident. And then next week, the board will vote on whether or not to adopt the proposed policies. So again, as I said, the two for 680 are the increase in the minimum and the 50% clean air vehicle toll. The reasons for these changes, for the change to the minimum toll, is because in practice we've never gone below 50 cents. We need about 50 cents a minimum toll to cover the costs of collecting the tolls. And also 50 cents that is consistent with what the other lane operators do for their minimums. For the clean air vehicles, as more and more there's increased adoption of clean air vehicles throughout the Bay Area, we are charging them. All the operators are proposing to charge clean air vehicles a 50% toll to ensure continued mobility in those lanes. In Southern California, they've started charging clean air vehicles an 85% toll. So we're offering 50% for a couple of reasons. One is that to be consistent with Bay Area bridges, the clean air vehicles also get the 50% toll there for with the carpoolers, and as we're just seeing a lot more adoption, especially in the South Bay where the 237 lane is. They have about 40% to 50% of the cars in those lanes being clean air vehicles, and we're not achieving the mobility goals, and then we want to be consistent with all the lanes across the region. So we're expanding it to the other lanes. So what we're proposing for 680, or what our plan is for 680, is that we will move to this policy or move to this practice when 880 opens. 580 will follow at the time it opens at 680 Sunol northbound. So 680 Sunol and 580 will go a few months later than 880 and R680 in Contra Costa. Forward. So like I said, we did all this. We did a lot of public outreach about it, and got many comments. The packet for BAFA is going to be posted tomorrow, and if you're interested, you can read every single comment. They're very fun. Go ahead. In general, looking at the comment themes, the clean air vehicle tolling did get a lot of comments. The comments are very varied. There's a lot of there's a lot of drivers out there that do not drive clean air vehicles that feel that they should be 100% tolled. We're not allowed to do that, actually. We have to offer them some kind of toll discount. Of those that drive clean air vehicles that commented, it was interesting, and a lot of them feel they're not that upset about having to pay the toll. They're just upset that the rules are changing after they were promised something. That is the main concern. That was my take after I read all the comments. Then there's also a lot of comments from people who, from an environmental perspective and the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, feel very strongly that we should keep them free. So there's those kind of three perspectives within the comments. So based on that, we feel that a 50% toll is a good way to start tolling clean air vehicles. It's in the middle and consistent with the bridges. Next. As far as the minimum toll, there was the public comment feels a lot of people feel that there should be no minimum toll. There's a lot of comments that, especially in the middle of the day, they should just be open to all, and there should be no tolling. Our response is that we need the toll to cover the costs and maintain readiness for when there are issues in the lanes. And in practice, there is enough traffic throughout the day to support the toll, and the peaks of the commute are getting larger and larger. And then it's also consistent with the other Bay Area Express lanes. So when we move forward to our hearing next week, after receiving the public comment, our staff is still recommending that we move forward with these two policy changes for 680. In advance, and assuming that it would, or if the policy is accepted, leading up to the time period before we would implement it on 680, we would do outreach in the 680 corridor about the change for clean air vehicles. So back again to the schedule. Like I said, we've gone through all these steps, and the adoption vote will be next week. So we are here today to hear comments from the board.
Are you done, Tim?
Yes.
Well, okay.
Yeah, that concludes our presentation and staff report. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll open up to board comments. First of all, is there anyone from the public wishing to address anyone on this? No comments? Okay. Here we go. Yes, sir.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. I think I'm on. Yeah, okay. One of the things that I've noted that it has happened a number of times, but just one happened the other day where there was an accident that locked up 3 of the lanes, and the backup was like 4 or 5 miles. Does the express lane have the ability to open that up for all traffic during periods of time when that happens?
Yes, it does, and we typically do.
Okay. I don't know if that feature is on some of the signs, especially in West County. I don't know if that feature is on the signs or not.
I don't think it's on the sign. Oh, well, so when you say West County, there are no express lanes in
All
West
right,
County.
I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry, across the county. No, there's no express lanes, but there are HOV lanes, which should also be opened up in an incident like
Those
that.
the policy doesn't work that way.
Okay, so
on
you're
HOV
just,
lanes.
I'm sorry,
It's
you're just
for
doing
express
express
lanes.
vehicles.
Just for
and that's-
express
okay.
lanes. Mhm.
Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I clearly understand. So if the sign says $4, a clean air vehicle, once this is implemented, should it be implemented, would be $2. That's correct. Thank you. And is there going to, other than the outreach, is there going to be some posting on this, or for folks to understand that?
Yes. So because there's a couple steps actually. I should have mentioned. So clean air vehicles will have to get a clean air vehicle toll tag.
They'll have to do what?
A special clean air vehicle toll tag. So that when it's set in the one position, they still get a 50% discount.
So is that a fast track or a different?
It's a fast track, but it's another kind of fast track now.
I would like to think that most clean
So
air
we have
vehicles
flex,
have the fast
and
track.
now we'll have clean air vehicle flex tags. So SR 237, when they opened their extension on November 15th, they just went through this process to start charging clean air vehicles half-price tolls. And so we will put up portable changeable message signs on the corridor. We feel like that's our best way to talk to people because they're there.
Well, it does two things. It tells the people with clean air vehicles, but it also tells those without clean air vehicles, based on your polling, that or open public, that people are actually hearing, or we've responded that they are actually paying some portion of a toll.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay, so that means with the 50-cent minimum, you have to have a fast track to use the lane.
That's correct.
I mean, so there's no wandering in and out in off hours. Like
So
some
the
may have done in
hours of operation are 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. So on the weekends and in the weeknights, anyone can go in there without a fast track.
Okay.
But during the day, if you're a solo, during the day, you do need a fast track.
50-cent minimum is only why it's active.
That's correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't clarify that.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions. The outreach, did you do targeted Facebook?
No, Nextdoor was targeted, but the Facebook posts were just through 511 Facebook and through 511 MTC and Fast Track Facebook, and we boosted the posts.
Okay. The reason I ask is I'm on Facebook pretty regularly, and
probably
I've seen
didn't
nothing
Okay.
at all.
Do you not follow
And
MTC?
I do follow MTC, and I have not seen them.
Okay.
And that is a concern. because if I, who would notice things like that, have not seen them, I am concerned that many of my constituents have also not seen them. The next door ones, if they've been on there, I have not seen them there either, but then I'm clear out in Clayton, but there are a lot of people that use 680 corridor who live in Clayton and would like to know that this is coming and probably would have comments about it. And as far as putting it in the newspaper, you know what? There's less than a 20% penetration of the newspaper if they read the front page and the sports page.
I apologize. That wasn't really a public outreach strategy. That's a requirement, a legal requirement.
So it was a
because it's
legal posting,
that's a
which
legal
means
posting
nobody
thing.
saw that.
That's why, exactly. That's
Okay,
why it's on the
so
slide.
nobody saw that.
I apologize.
So I got to tell you, this is going to come as a big shock to a lot of people. I think you need to really do some serious outreach to let people know that this is happening. It's not penetrated.
Okay.
I know a lot of people who commute in that corridor. All of us do. I've heard zero comments, and I would have heard big comments about this. And timing could be better.
Okay.
Far better for those of us in Contra Costa County who could face some backlash over this, especially since we have a measure on the ballot in the primary. So I am a little concerned that this is going to have negative consequences, but especially if people don't know about it, and I don't think they do. So it would have been nice to have known about this quite a while ago. Thanks.
And as your county representative for MTC, I will make sure that that those words are expressed in a big way. Okay.
Thank you for being here tonight in the presentation. Question, and it's sort of I probably always ask this when we make these changes. Any legacy account holders that are exempt from this? Any legacy classes? Any legacy groups of commissioners that don't pay these?
Not as far as I know.
Could you find out? Because I think there are.
Okay.
And if there are, I think we ought to know what they are, and we ought to make sure we have that conversation. There should be no legacy holders. If we're going to make these changes, it needs to be fair and equal to everybody, and we need to share the pain.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, though.
Thank you.
All right, I don't have fast track. In fact, I don't even know how to spell it. But the idea is, when you said, if this is another, it's Highway 4, we just stopped. But the idea is what I'm asking. When you said it's another form of fast track, that's not two boxes, or is that another apparatus on your windshield?
So if you, how to explain this? So originally there was a standard fast track.
Yes,
track.
ma'am. I know what that is. I was teasing.
Then when we first introduced the express lanes, we adopted the Fast Track Flex toll tag, which has a switch so that people can designate that they're carpoolers and avoid tolls. With the introduction of these clean air vehicle half-price tolls, we wanted to make sure that, and also as a companion to enforcement, we didn't want to ask clean air vehicles just to simply set it in 2 in order to get a half-price toll. We wanted them to be able to set it in 1 to get a half-price toll so that it wouldn't confuse the enforcement, because the beacon will flash that it's a 1. And so if the clean air vehicle is flashing a 2 and CHP sees that they're 1, it's a waste of time of CHP resources. It can slow down the lanes. So for those purposes, we created another Fast Track Flex tag specifically for clean air vehicles that they need to submit their clean air vehicle documentation in order to get. So they can set it in 1 and still get a 50% toll discount.
Wow. Is that going to be a pain for, what date does all this start?
It'll start anywhere between as early as August.
Okay, so you're going to put that word out also?
Yes, definitely. So 237 just went through this. They instituted this policy in November. And so far, Fast Track has issued 4,000 clean air vehicle flex tags.
Is there any charge to get this?
No.
Okay, but the best thing we have to do is give communication.
Correct, yes.
So, because I can see, that's going to be a cluster right from the get-go.
Yes, communication will be critical, and it'll be challenging. It'll be challenging because people are used to using the lanes already, and they're not expecting. It's not like we're opening a new lane, so people are really paying attention. So we will have to rely on a lot of messaging on the corridor.
All right. This was for information purposes. Any more questions? Okay, take back that CCTA has been a little skeptical. We're asking a few questions. I think that message needs to go back. And thanks, for
Okay, thank you.
you'll help deliver the message. All right, we now go for a sixth legislative update.
Commissioners, I'm going to, for the second time in my career at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, I'm going to carry an agenda item. I'm pretty excited about this. It's the FASTER. We were asked as staff to stay engaged and provide feedback to the board, which we're trying to do. And so what we've done today is we prepared an agenda item for information only. And it's got some of the principles, the governance, some of the potential projects. And so what we're looking for is feedback from you. There is a bill, Senate Bill 278, that's under development. That could be the bill that carries the FASTER Act into the future. But we're not here to talk about whether or not you support the concept, FASTER yes, FASTER no. What we're saying is take a look at those governance, the principles, and give us some feedback so we can finalize this document. And then we just met with Congressman DeSaulnier, and he's very, very interested in this initiative. And so once we can get your approval, then we can start sharing this with others.
Questions? Wow, must be good when you don't.
Pretty good, huh?
Yeah, you really good.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. What is it you want us to look at? The attachment?
Yeah, so the attachment, so it's faster. It's got a nice cover letter in color. It looks really beautiful in this one. Talks about a 40-year measure, and then it goes into, this is where you want to really take a look, governance. So we put together some principles. We think the Board of Supervisors, for example, in each county should vote to place the sales tax, if that's what it's going to be, on the ballot. So you have local control to make sure that your governance structure is right for each county. Without that, if Senator Bell passes legislation and it just goes directly to the voters, you're going to lose control of what's in that bill. I think there was a recent bill Senate that created the RM3 program, the Regional Measure 3, that we lost control of. And so we don't want to do that. So I think it's imperative that the Board of Supervisors vote at a local level to place this on the ballot, to making sure that the governance structure is correct. And the project delivery, a lot of money is wasted when we have project delivery processes that don't work that well. And so we've made some suggestions to try to improve project delivery. You can save money there. So if you have $100 billion and half of it over time goes to waste, you only have $50 billion. So let's figure out a way of putting that money to use in the most efficient and effective way. And so recently we got CMGC legislation, construction manager, general contractor, to help expedite the project and make sure they have better cost certainty. I think those kinds of tools are what we need to make sure that we can deliver this program if it passes. And then lastly, we've listed some projects, upgrading transit, because that's what they're going to try to focus in on, is transit, and build giant rail corridors. But what Tim and I have talked about is, okay, that's great. It's like in Los Angeles, you're going to build rail lines out to the hinterlands of LA County. But you still got to get to the transit node. You still got to be able to get on that train. So if there's not parking, if it's too far away, we have to, bless you, we have to make sure that we have the connectivity to that system. And then we've been preaching this signature corridor. We're your commute shed. 680 is a major commute shed. 80 is a major commute shed in Commissioner Swearingen's area. So when there is an accident on 80, it just exacerbates the issue, right? Because it makes it look 10 times worse than it already is. And so take a look at those signature corridors and make sure you make investments in those corridors as well. And then we have a list of investments, and we try to make it higher level than identify exactly what you're going to spend the money on, but give, once again, ideas of how you would invest those dollars. This is information only. And once we can bring it back at a future date to get concurrence on what the final document's going to look like, what kind of governance structure you want.
Karen, are you all right now?
Yes,
Okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we had a brief discussion on this at the ABAG MTC Joint Legislation Committee last week. And we were informed that the structure of this bill is intended to do exactly what we would prefer it not do. It would be just exactly like RM3, where the counties would be directed by the legislation to put it on the ballot. And we asked about that, not so diplomatically, and we were frankly told that's a deal breaker. And so, we've got an uphill fight on that one. But I think personally that this looks really good. I think we need to put ourselves out there and be strong in our message as we go forward. And I'll read through it a little bit more and look at any potential edits or anything like that. But I think from what I've seen so far, it looks really good.
Yeah, Commissioners, it's set up as an action item, so you can actually adopt it tonight if you want, or you can say, staff, we'll be back with more comments and finalize the document at a future meeting. We'll be happy to do that.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest we not take action tonight. At that same meeting, we got some pretty interesting polling data, and it's not ready to bake yet. And so I just don't think we should take any position, at least that's my position. If others want to, we need to wait a little bit longer.
I would amplify on that just a little bit. The polling data that we got was that you can't pass this and a housing bill, and the people behind this bill are even thinking about whether they want to try to go with both. So they may force the housing bill to go first. This may wait, in which case maybe our priorities change. But let's sit on this and see what happens over the next month or so. But I think as far as conversations that you have, that staff is having with the proponents, I think this is a really good base.
No.
Yeah, I agree that I don't think we're ready to completely support this, but as Julia is sort of saying, but maybe in different words, that continue to advocate for our fair share, right, for the governance, for what's important to our county and how it supports our mission and our goals, and fight tooth and nail to get that so we don't end up like RM3. And if, the feedback is, well, you're just crying, that's real. That's very real. We're $600 million short on RM3. And, I have a lot of skepticism in general about this because it's really led by those companies I said at our last meeting that if they get off their hind ends, take the 10 largest companies, it just came out again. Apple Computer has $253 billion excess cash in the bank. And they want to tax and promote, and they're willing to put millions of dollars to promote this. Write a check for a couple of, really, now we got 10 of them, each put up 10, get 20 of those big companies, they each put up 5. We have our $100 million. Billion, sorry, our $100 billion, and it's a raindrop on the ocean, and it's tax deductible to them. You know what? This is just a little offensive when the average person, when you look at the economic signs, and let's be honest, high stock market means underlying problem. In all of our recessions, stock market goes up to its peak. The underlying economic issues are in the hole. And we're right there again. And they're asking us to subsidize them and their business practices, and again, to subsidize those cities. Fight for what we can get for the best deal if it goes through, but I think ultimately it's still not necessarily the best one, but thanks.
Any other comments? Well, it sounds like, sir, we're going to hold and wait pattern.
Yeah, Commissioners, we'll continue to refine based on comments. We'll continue to weigh in when we can, when we're asked to provide comments as this unfolds. And we'll continue to provide feedback to you. And once we think we're ready, we weren't asking you for a position, to take a position on whether or not you support FAST or not. We wanted you to look at, once again, at the principles behind, so that staff knows what we need to, how to position ourselves. So that's really what the goal was, is take a look at the governance structure, the principles, the project, delivery, things like that, and then give us feedback on how do we need to change it, or can we just move forward? Because we're going to move forward based on the kind of this schematic that we laid out here. So if there's something in there you don't really like, you don't want the Board of Supervisors to vote on that, fine. Just tell us, and then we'll kick that out.
When you said the congressman was extremely interested, didn't you say he was extremely interested in this?
Yes, he's interested in, because he's getting questions on this.
So do we have a feeling where he's at on this?
Well, I think it's very similar to RM3. I believe the word
right,
was he was going to write letters of opposition. Was that right, Tim? Yeah, he's not happy with it, but he wants to know, how do we feel about it? And so what we're trying to do, we didn't share this document with him, but his staffers can pull this off the agenda tonight.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Well, with that clarification, Randy, and I think that's helpful, while it may not be in a final form, I think the general direction, we could move to say this is the general direction. We're definitely not taking a position on the measure itself, because we don't even know what that looks like. But these are sort of the principles that we feel we have a right to support and to get what we need if there is a measure that goes forward. And I think you deserve our support to go and advocate for those and continue to argue. So I'm going to throw it out there and move that we back these, we support this as principles for our negotiation on any potential measure, but that we are absolutely not taking a position yet, because we don't know what that will look like in the future.
If I could just say, that I sort of get what you're saying, but I think we've given a clear direction. This sounds to me, to be honest, what MTC and ABAG did over all the housing stuff. We're not really doing it. We're not supporting it. But in fact, they did, Julie.
Well, MTC and ABAG aren't doing anything with this
Not on
measure.
this, but I'm talking last year in the mess that we were in.
Yeah.
And everybody said, oh, no, we didn't really vote on it. Well, no, it was, but you did. I think we shouldn't do that, because it's sending the wrong message. And I know we want to play and say we're...
No. I want to help our staff feel like they're supported.
Right. And I think Randy said he has a clear direction at this point to keep moving forward and all of that. But I don't think the board should take any action because it's going to give a false sense. Everybody else is going to read it. Oh, yeah, they support it. And they're going to say, yep, Contra Costa County Transportation.
Does Randy feel like he has support for going ahead in direction on how to advocate?
Anybody
or do you really
disagree
need an
with
action?
That? Does anybody disagree with that?
Well, I've still got...
Staff has been negotiating, and I wrote an email to all of you a long time ago about what we talked about on project delivery and who should manage the money, and so this is reflective. What this also includes are potential projects, it identifies some of the concepts that could be funded to help our county, and so what we've done so far is without your concurrence, we have been negotiating on behalf of you.
So let me rephrase my attempted motion. Does anybody disagree with the general direction laid out here? If not, go forth. Without a motion, consensus only. Anybody object to consensus that they've got a pretty good parameters here?
What I think, if I may, what I think I'm hearing is the money for this, where it's going. The only objection I've heard so far is that it's coming from a 1-cent sales tax. But has that been decided? That's where the funding's going to come from, or is that just sort of the direction they're going, not us?
That's what they're going.
Okay.
I think maybe a different way of saying that, excuse me, but I think the different way of saying that is that's going to be decided when Senate Bill 7, whatever the 248 is going to be finalized. Currently, the thought is a 1-cent sales tax for 40 years generates about $100 billion
Yeah, okay.
That's assuming all counties pass that 1 cent. There's a county that hasn't passed a sales tax.
I'm okay with it.
So I
This
think
would be
I think what's,
cumulative over the Bay Area, though. So those that don't vote for it are offset by the ones that vote for it at 80%.
We don't know that.
Well,
We're
that's the
making
way
that
they're setting
assumption.
it up.
We're making the assumption. So those are the things that we look at is, okay, what if Contra Costa County doesn't pass, but we get the benefit of a $90 billion initiative over 40 years? What would our needs be? Well, it may be a second crossing underneath the bay for BART, because that would alleviate some of that congestion. Maybe it might be getting rid of or fixing Interstate 680 headed towards Silicon Valley. Maybe running rail down a location. Those are the things that we're looking at. And so we've developed some concepts for projects, but I think the real key here, once again, is what we're kind of pushing on is the investments are fine, but the finalization of the bill hasn't happened. But we're more concerned of making our point of some of our frustrations over time and trying to kind of articulate that through this opportunity to say there's some governance issues here that the East Bay doesn't like. We don't like how we're treated sometimes. And so these are some of the proposals that may help that. And then we could be better at project delivery. We know that. If we had better tools.
So I think that you've already been working in the best interests of Contra Costa, and so I would say continue to go forward with that advocacy and work that you've started.
It seems like we had a few comments at our APC meeting, and I know one of them, I think, maybe I'm dreaming, but I think I brought up, the possibility of funding at least the design of a new Richmond-San Rafael bridge. And so the comments that came up from APC, did they find their way into this or not?
So the comment you made, including the comment about EV, any kind of legislation to accelerate EVs is now in our state legislative platform as well as our federal. So when we were back at TRB, when we talked about to the Probst Committee, we talked about EV legislation on a federal level and funding sources that can help Contra Costa deliver our EV readiness plan faster. So that was taken to Washington. Richmond-San Rafael Bridge is on the state legislative platform.
It's on the what?
Our state legislative platform. So looking for opportunities in case if there's an opportunity.
So that's why it's not in here?
It will be in here. Ultimately, it'll be another corridor. It'll be the 580 corridor, including.
Oh, okay.
So it's the toll plaza, those kinds of projects that we
I see that. I just didn't see anything about a new bridge.
Yeah, so we'll add the new bridge here.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten those comments. Those two, EV and your Richmond San Rafael bridge, we caught that loud and clear.
So what do we have timeline wise? I'm a tax preparer. What's our deadline? What do you think it's going to be? And what really should the next steps for we commissioners?
From a staff perspective, we don't know what the timeline looks like because the legislation is not gelling very quickly. The senator has reached out to our assembly members and our senator. We have tried to go in and talk to them. So from a staff perspective, when we're called in to talk to our assembly members and our senator, we typically go in with, these are our principles. So we've gone in and said, Senator and assembly members, these are our principles. All we're looking for, are we going in the right direction? Do you see something here that you absolutely don't like? Because if you don't want, for example, one of the proposals is we want to be treated like an RTPA. We want to get federal funding directly. If this is going to happen, we're going to have to get more access to more of our funds rather than compete for them. We need those dollars to leverage for our future projects. But if you don't like that, then you just say, Randy, don't talk about RTPA status. And then we cut it out, and then we give the package back. That's all we're saying. So what we try to do with this package is listen to what your frustrations are and then try to put them in this document as clearly as possible. So if like we want to do, if you want us to do construction, let's say you're going to build let's say you're going to widen X. or you're going to build a new transit line. Why? Do you want us to oversee or play in in any of those phases of those projects? We articulate that. That's what we heard. And so we're doing everything we can to look at this as an opportunity to articulate maybe some of our frustrations, both from RM3 and the past, so that if the bill is ever daylighted, we can say, hey, we want these things, and you're going to get pushback. And they're start going to ask, why do you want to be an RTPA? Well, we're frustrated having to compete for our own money. And then when you have a sub-allocation from the HIP, we don't get any money. And yet we're just like Solana. We're no different than Solana, but why didn't we get any money? Those governance principles are in here. And it's easier for staff. We'll go forward, and if we make a mistake, then that's where I get yelled at, right? But I mean, I'm willing to do that. But we're just trying to daylight this now. These are the things that we're asking for when we're called every other week by the Bay Area Council.
Julie.
Yeah, just to clarify where we were informed this is going at our legislation committee meetings at ABAG last week, staff informed us that it probably will pass out of the Senate by the end of the month in the current form, which is a shell bill that says virtually nothing. And it will not get fleshed out until it gets into the House sometime, or into the Assembly sometime in February, maybe even March. So we won't actually see text until sometime late February, probably, for what they're even intending for the bill to say. So he's playing this very close to the vest, and it just has to go out of his house, and they'll all support that. So,
Commissioners, this also helps us when we develop legislative proposals for the future. CMGC was a legislative proposal. We're trying to improve delivery because you ask us, can you improve delivery? Yes, we can, but we're going to have to get legislation. Do you approve CMGC? Yes, we do, and now we have that legislation for California for local agencies like ours. So it helps us in the long run as well because it kind of gives us a framework of which to operate from.
Karen.
Thank you. And I appreciate the Bay Area Council is calling, and I appreciate that they're trying, to get your opinion. But I'm with Newell. I'm really getting tired of these business organizations pushing. And maybe they need to come and talk to each of us individually and other elected officials to get, instead of just a blanket thing from, and this is no offense to you or to the staff, but they need to be hearing from us because there is so much frustration. It's just, at the same meeting Julie and I were at last week, a member who is appointed by another body, he just could not understand why we would not, as counties, be willing to put $3 million to pay to put this on the ballot for $10 billion in returns. Now, on the top of it, absolutely, that makes sense. But he doesn't understand, plus he's a millionaire in his own right, he doesn't understand what we're dealing with here in Contra Costa County and what our constituents are facing. And it's just so frustrating. I worked for somebody who was the CEO of the Bay Area Council. I have a lot of respect for them. I have a constituent who lives in my district, who is their senior vice president. These are wonderful people. But they just, in my opinion, have blinders, and I really think they need to have more interaction with those of us who are on the ground dealing with constituents and what our constituent issues are. So I appreciate that they're calling you, Randy, but maybe next time tell them, maybe you need to go see some people on my board.
Looking at the project list, yes, continue to advocate for that project list. Just went through it again just now, and there's nothing I would add to it. I was looking at Brentwood to Tracy, and that was already in there to make sure we had some express routes, and that was my big concern in this process. So I'm kind of leaning with Juliet right now. We don't need a vote, but we just need to nod our heads. Yes, you're going in the right direction. Let's move forward, advocating this project list. whether or not it turns out to be a cent sales tax or whatever, we can deal with that in the future. But right now, to give you what you're looking for is, yes, you're headed in the right direction. You're advocating the projects that we support, so let's continue to do that. And so with that idea, I'd agree with Julie. Let's all just nod ahead and say, yes, you're heading in the right direction. Go forth and pound this on.
That's it. Next agenda. Hey, when you say yes, you stop talking.
We're happy to.
We're happy just to move the item.
All right. Good evening, Chair Taylor, Commissioners. We did give this presentation to the APC. We'll go through it quickly for you. I think most of the meat of it is the second half, which Tim is giving, but we'll get started. Go ahead, Tim, and with some of this. I'm preaching to the choir here. We all know the key idea is mode shift at this point. We're not going to build our way out of the congestion problem, specifically in 680. So the whole concept of mobility as a service was to help generate mode shift. As the APC knows, I love this slide. Our younger generation is already rethinking car ownership. They're already asking for alternative single occupant vehicles. So this is a way to give that to them so they can not have to buy a car and not have to be a single occupant driver. The other nice thing about mobility as a service is it increases access and mobility and opportunities for everybody. This definition of mobility as a service, public and private transportation services that provide personalized mobility options. This isn't a personal car. This is mobility options that are personalized to a person's specific needs. It's based, like I said, it's based on traveler needs, end-to-end journeys, a single payment option, and meant to optimize the transportation system. Oh, go ahead. We started at the top when we were putting together the MOS application with these guiding principles. I think we've captured everything here. I'm specifically looking at some of the things, promote equitable access, complement transit, sustainability, collaboration, and improve safety. This is a schematic of the idea of the mobility on demand platform or mobility as a service platform. The top half of the circle is your apps and your services. It would have a trip planning, scheduling, uniform payment, rewards, incentives. Those are the primary things to help people better think higher of transit use. The bottom half is the mobility asset. So carpool, vanpool, car sharing, microtransits, your bicycles and scooters, transit, of course, SAV shuttles, TNCs, all those kind of things are the modes that people would access through the platform. This goes back to kind of that millennial slide. Travel behavior is what we need to change, get people out of their cars and provide them real options for traveling that compete with the vehicle. So it's all about changing travel behavior. If you watch the little, I think it starts with the little blue circle down on the bottom right, this is the idea of mobility as a service. Walk to a shared mobility hub, take a shuttle to urban connection where they can transfer onto more mass transit option. Mobility as a service is going to work through data collection. As we can collect as much data as we can possibly get out of the system and put it back into the system that will give people real-time information to be able to make good trip choices and take advantage of the modes that are available to them. Also, the data will help us in the long run with planning future transportation. I hear the benefits of the MOS program. I won't read through those. I think we've gone through these several times before. And I'll turn it over to the grant.
Thank you, Peter. So I just want to say, Randy and I just got back from Transportation Research Board, and mobility as a service, mobility on demand, shared mobility is probably in the top 2 topics at Transportation Research Board right now. And it's being really talked about, not just here, but obviously throughout the world and in Europe. And so this is something that's really going to be the future of transportation. It's going to change the way that we do business. It's an absolute game changer for transportation. And this was one of the strategies that as last summer we went through developing the Transportation Expenditure Plan. This is one of the strategies that we would look at and continue to look at with that Transportation Expenditure Plan. And so with that overall concept, back in 2018, the authority submitted an Advanced Transportation Congestion Management Technologies Deployment Grant. And so on April 1st of last year, we got the notice of award, and we were really excited about it. Randy thought it was a joke because it was April Fool's Day. So we were really excited about this, and the reason why we're excited is that we're a county regional or transportation agency, and we actually received the largest allocation for a public agency out of the $52 million that was allocated. So there was a total of 51 applications, $265 million total worth of projects, and we were essentially the second award recipient, largest award recipient. The first was actually University of Alabama. And so if you think about that through the entire nation, that's really, really impressive for the pea shooter organization. And so really the grant features, it requires a 50% match. And so what that means is that we received an $8 million allocation. So we had to go out and look for another $8 million of match to do a 1-for-1 match. But since the project is $17.8 million, we basically overmatched by $1.8 million, about 20%. And so what that does is it helps our grant be more competitive because the feds are getting more value from their money through this grant. And the other thing that it's really interesting is that the feds are really interested in open architecture. And so in this grant, we're going to figure out how to do public-private partnership with the public operators, private operators, and figure out how that business model is going to work. And then we decided to really not have to have a middle person and work through Caltrans local assistance. We also decided to do a direct award agreement. So that way we're working directly with US DOT on this grant, and it really streamlined things. And the reason why it's streamlined is that we got the notice of award in April, and we were actually able to get the draft cooperative agreement, which is in front of you tonight, within 9 months, which compared to some of the other recipients, that's like record time. And that's just based on the experience and also our strategic consultant advanced mobility group. They were based on their experience and working on these types of grants, they were able to expedite that process. The overall scope of the project is in 3 phases. First phase is focusing on the 680 corridor. Second phase is expanding it to Contra Costa County. Third phase is the Bay Area. This grant is really focused on phase 1 with developing a document that shows how to expand it and scale it up to go out through all of Contra Costa County and the Bay Area. So these are our partners. We picked BART to be one of our key public partners in this because they have 118 million riders. They also share in our same vision. They want to do more first and last mile. They want to connect BART better with the local transit services. And so we share in that vision too. We also needed to have these mobility assets. And so we partner with AAA, with GIG, CarShare, Local Transit, County Connection. And then we also need program evaluation from UC Berkeley, the Transportation Sustainable Research Center. TAM is a partner because the USDOT is really interested in how does this work when you go from Contra Costa County to another county. And so they're going to be working and helping us to understand that regional collaboration. Advanced Mobility Group, they will be doing program management. And so these partners are actually written in the grant. So these are basically, we'll be coming to you next month with a contract with some of these other partners and partnership agreements, but we have to write these public interest findings to be able to prove that these are the right partners for the grant. And then MTC, we have to coordinate with them on Clipper to provide a payment option within the overall platform. And then we have a number of other stakeholders. This is the overall organization chart. I'll be doing the grant management, grant compliance, partner management, Peter's going to be doing the overall implementation of the grant. And this is the overall partner contribution. I'm not going to run through all the numbers, but the key takeaway here is there's a little over $1 million of CCTA local dollars, and we leveraged all of that with all of this money. So if you look at the we're getting a $17.8 million project with a $1.1 million contribution, and we're doing that through our Innovate 680 program, and the MOS platform and transportation demand management is strategy 7 of Innovate 680. I already went through the number of partners, but Telegro will be helping with traffic analytics and prediction, and then Peter's going to be working with TDM to provide those rewards and incentives. This is the overall budget. This is very, very complicated. We have to fill out all the forms, figure out all the rates, direct rates, overhead, all our subs, our partners, working with private companies. And so this took a lot of time, but again, because of our experience, we were able to expedite that. And so this overall budget is in three categories, and it funds these 3 separate scopes. The mobility application and development, so the overall system integration and development of the application. And then you have the mobility assets and infrastructure, and then the actual system integration, which is the backroom operations of the overall platforms. These are the deliverables. These are some of the milestones, but we have to go through what's called the federal, what's called the V diagram. We have to do system engineering management plans, concept of operations. Those are those other documents in system engineering. And so the overall schedule for this entire grant is a 3-year grant, and so we have to provide a final report by May 1st of 2023. And so we're asking you to approve the cooperative agreement with US DOT for $8 million for the Bay Area Mobility on Demand grant. And that concludes our presentation.
Perfect.
Questions, comments?
Well, first of all, a comment, that org chart, that's what sold me. The money and stuff, that's all well done. The expertise, the org chart gives us the greatest position to create the greatest amount of success. I'd move this item in a heartbeat. Really well done. 9 months, federalized. Nobody's ever done that. You guys are really, really good at what you're doing.
Yeah, Julie's already seconded. But my big comment is, as I look at this whole thing, and the ultimate dream is it's all done through here. You have an app on the phone that says I'm going from here to here. How do I get there? And we get rid of Clipper and we pay it through the system too. And everything is controlled. Everything is driven off your phone. And it gets you from here to that way, depending on, do I need to get there tomorrow, today? I got lots of money to spend. How fast can I get there? I don't have any money to spend. How long is it going to take me? Whatever options and robustness that we can build into this, because I think that's just going to really sell whatever it is we have to do. It has to be, ultimately it has to end up being on your phone.
Other comments? So I knew I had a first from Newell.
Second for me.
Second from Julie. All right. Well, any more discussion? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. True. Before we close, is there anyone out there wishing to speak on this topic? Public comments? No one? Okay. Moving on. 489, approved changes to authorize positions and amend the Contra Costa Transportation Authority's salaries, benefits, compensation plans.
Commissioners, I'll be handling this agenda item as well. So as you know, Tim said we're a pea shooter sized organization. We have a staff of 20. We have a couple things that we try to do. We try to be an owner of choice and make sure that we're good partners with our contractors and our consultants, because we do about 95% of our work is contracted out to the private sector to help us, partner with us to deliver our projects and programs here. And we also want to be an employer of choice, because you're probably your most valuable asset that you have is the 20 employees at CCT. Maybe not me, but the other 19 for sure. And so with the retirement of our deputy executive director for admin, we always look at the positions that are open, and we want to make sure that they're classed right, that they're doing the right things. And so we thought that after we discussed this with Brian, who we promoted to CFO, that it'd probably be better to take the facilities and the HR duties from Brian, make him the CFO, not a deputy director of admin. That's probably not his strength. And then move those other duties over to Terry Ann. And so Terry Ann now is the clerk of the board, but she also does all our facilities and our HR work. And that HR work is very, very important because you want to make sure you meet the requirements of the law. And so some of our admin area, our manuals needed to be updated to make sure we're in compliance. And so she's done a really good job. But you've never heard, when you go out there and look for a classification to try to mirror what she does, it's not there. And so, as you know, we contract out 95% of our work. So Allison Picard from RGS is here tonight to help me fill in the rest of the agenda item and explain the nuances of what we're trying to do here. But the proposal is to reclass and rename Terry Ann's position from clerk of the board to Director of Admin Services / Clerk of the Board. Is that correct? Okay, good. Thank you. Allison Picard, please. And she used to work for the county, by the way.
Yes, I did. Good evening, especially Commissioners, Federal Governor, and Supervisor Mitroff. I worked with you in a former life, so special greetings to you. You outlined that exactly correct. When organizations reorganize and job duties are redistributed, it's appropriate to take a step back and look at the job description. The authority asked us to do that along with the compensation. So the duties were significantly enough out of the scope of the typical clerk to the board that we recommended creating a new position called Director of Administrative Services. That job description is in your agenda item for approval. Regarding the compensation, as he pointed out, it was difficult to find a comp that was exact match. It's not like a police officer that does that same work in every jurisdiction. Especially small agencies like a transportation authority can align the duties really differently. We looked at other counties, other big cities, trying to find some comps. There really just weren't any that were useful. So when that occurs, and that's not uncommon, we look at what we call internal equity. We try to look at the alignments within an organization, and for that reason, what we're recommending is that the salary for this position be set 10% below the Director of Planning. It's also recommended that the reclass be effective retroactively to July 1st of 2019 because the duties have been absorbed for the most part since October of 2018 when that former position was vacated.
It did appear that it's a no-brainer, but I still have to ask. Is there any comments from the board?
I'd like to abstain. Nothing against Terry Ann, but I will be abstaining.
Okay. Is there anyone from the public who should address this? All right, we'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? One abstain. Thank you. So is that on the record?
Yes, and for the record, it was Commissioner Mitroff who abstained.
Okay, got it.
Good evening again, Peter Engel, CCGA staff. Last month I brought this item to you talking about potential to participate with the California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, Cal EVIP. There was a lot of questions at that time. There still are some questions. The use of TFCA funds, which we believe would be allowed as matching funds, they would be allowed, but very difficult to use, and there would be a lot of hoops we have to jump through. So to be on the safe side, I'm pretty much just looking at Measure J, Program 17 funds. We will still keep the option of TFCA open if we decide to go down this road. The other consideration that I've looked at very closely over the last month is we have two more potential program opportunities for EV infrastructure deployment in the county. One is the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Fund that's going to be coming through the Air District, and the other is the CEC's Program 2. As you recall, when we did our EV electric blueprint, that was phase one of a program that was coming out of the CEC. Phase 2 is actually funds that go to those agencies that completed the blueprint on time to get money to implement the program. We're anticipating that both of those programs will also require some matching funds, so we want to retain some of our available funds that that we can match those other programs as they come down the line. So what I've proposed to you for approval is to provide not to exceed $300,000 over the 4-year period of the program. That would be 2021 through 2024. And then as the program moves forward, we could find primarily we're looking at Measure J, Program 17 funds, but we could also look at TFCA funds if they fit appropriately. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Comments, questions? Julie?
Yeah, this is just a 4-year project, right?
Yeah, so what we have
it's not
some
an ongoing obligation.
It's not an ongoing
funds.
obligation. It's just we're proposing for 4 years. The Marin Clean Energy is also proposing a certain amount of money that they're going to spread out over a 4-year period. So we would just fall in line with that.
But it's not anything longer than a 4-year
That's
commitment.
correct. It's just a 4-year commitment.
Other comments, questions? Do we entertain a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a first and I have a second. Any discussion? Before I do that, is there anyone from the public wishing to address us on this item? All right. Then we will call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Correspondence and communications. That would be attached. Associated committee reports. That. Commissioner staff reports. Are you going to address one of our staff members leaving?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Chairman.
Just thought I'd ask that. Chair's comments, reports, I have none. Executive staff.
Commissioners, I wanted to announce that James Hinkamp, James right there, James Hinkamp, he got engaged. He was very happy, and then he found out that his fiancee got a promotion to Amsterdam. And so for whatever reason, he told me he had to go with his fiancee to Amsterdam. I was trying to talk him out of it, but I couldn't do it. So he's resigning as of January the 17th. Is that correct, James? Correct. James, do you want to say anything? We would hire him back. I mean, that's probably the highest compliment you can pay anybody is hire him twice, because you already know it once, but twice that I'd hire him back anytime. So you've been great. Thank you. Two items I want to talk about. One, we met with Secretary David Kim. He's coming back to California. He's the California State Transportation Agency Secretary. Got to meet with him and Lori Pepper. We asked for a couple of things, because when we go to Sacramento, if I get forced to go to Sacramento, we always go with our hand open and our hat out. And so we asked for $400 million on 680 to complete the Innovate 680. The state could use that as a model for extending that all the way down to 280, but you got to try those strategies. And we're about 400 million short. So we asked for 400 million. Then we asked for another 25 to support the one-off Gomentum Station pilot project, so we can start leveraging the ATC MTD grant and things like that. We just got an ADS grant. I'll talk about that. So it's another 25 million, but we don't want to match. Right now we have a $3.5 million allocation from the governor, but it's going to four or five projects, and as Tim says, it gets very complex. And when you send that over to a state agency to analyze it, we still don't have the check, and it takes forever to get paid. So it's too complex for the system. So we said, give us 25 million, no match, and we'll be very, very happy. So we asked for 425 million. So hopefully we get half. That'd be great. The other thing is there's a PBS documentary being developed to talk about transit innovations in the San Francisco Bay Area. And for whatever reason, I think it was Dr. Susan Shaheen that recommended that the producers talk to us about the things that we're doing with transit innovations. So they interviewed us once. We were out at Roundhouse looking at the SAV pilot project there in San Ramon, got some pretty good footage of the vehicles operating, a lot of interest. And then recently we got the Advanced Automated Driving System grant. We got $7.5 million for that we're going to leverage, actually probably more than 2 to 1. We're going to build almost a $30 million proposal leveraging this federal money. But one of the one of the ideas, there's a couple of ideas I think are important, and I'll just go over, there's three. One is, how do we outfit the corridor, Interstate 680, in the future for electronics to make sure these vehicles can operate properly, make sure the connectivity is correct? And then what is the occupancy of a lane when they're connected and they're following very, very closely and they don't crash as much or at all? So we think that the number, instead of 2,000 vehicles per lane per hour, it's more like 3,000 in the future. But think about your models in the future. So if your reliance on cars is dropping, as was shown with the Moss presentation, and you can get 3,000 vehicles per lane per hour on a freeway lane, as population grows, you might be able to mitigate that in other ways instead of widening Interstate 680. So that's the first pilot project. The second is we have a high absentee rate at the county hospital, and so we did a C-SPAN we were up down in LA, and we did this thing that was taped for C-SPAN, so they were running on C-SPAN, and a doctor from the county hospital was working out in LA, saw it and said, hey, those guys work in my county. So they came over and talked to us, and they said, if you ever can use this technology to help us in any way, we'd really welcome that. So pilot project number 2 is using minivans to start and testing self-docking wheelchair technology and occupant restraint systems. For the future is, how do we then make it a demand-based service so that we can get the people, when they have to go see the doctor, they can get there. And then when they get there, they're making better use of the doctor's times, and then hopefully their minor issues stay minor or get fixed, rather than they can't see the doctor, their minor issue becomes major. And ultimately it's expensive to society on the long run because their health kind of wanes. And so we want to try to lower the absentee rate at the county hospital using technology. And then third is we want to run a pilot program at Rossmore, and we want to run 2 to 6 of the shared autonomous vehicles, and then bring county connection in and make the handoff so the senior citizens don't have to walk across that major arterial over the Safeway to pick up their bus. And we filmed them, and they were I guess the right term is they're so cute. They were going, we want this now, and how come we didn't have this before, and does it really go this slow? Can you speed it up a little bit? And so we try to get these little tapes. We're trying to get little tidbits of the senior citizens asking their questions. So they got a ride, and so we just got a phone call today from one of the riders, and she said, you should mention Rossmore more. And what else did she say? She wanted something else more of faster. She wanted to know about the grant. Oh yeah, she wanted to know more about the grant. So they're really engaged. One of the occupants, senior citizen, he's losing his eyesight, so the DMV took his license away. And so he said, will this vehicle run after 5? Because our on-demand service quits at 5. Oh yeah, it'll run all night long. He was really, so I can actually go somewhere at night? I said, yeah, you can go somewhere at night, no problem, in the future. Another lady said that she gave up her driver's license voluntarily because she can't drive as well, and she saw a couple accidents, and that reminded her that maybe she ought to give up her license. So she likes this idea about a shared autonomous vehicle, a demand-based service. And so they're excited, we're excited, and so hopefully the documentary will turn out nicely. So that's my report.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate everybody being here tonight. We now will adjourn to closed session. So. We are now in open session, and there is nothing to report out. That being said, we will now adjourn.